Hello, everyone, and welcome to Console Room 2026. My name is Rob Levy. I'm going to be your MC and chaperone for the big dance we're doing here today as we take a look at Doctor Who and hiatuses and how to survive the next hiatus. Because for those of us that are passionate about Doctor Who, the word hiatus begins to make us panic, have hives, and freak out. So, yeah, that's what we're talking about, and thank you for hanging out with us as we do this. My name is Rob Levy. I'm a writer and DJ. I host a couple different radio shows on Louder Than War Radio, also a show on um, community radio STL. Also, I do a show on the Face Radio and Eardrum Buzz Radio in LA, and I am a co-host of the Modern Musicology podcast, and I've been in a couple Doctor Who anthologies and some Star Trek anthologies that have been published over the years as well. And I have a fantastic group of people on this panel with me, none of which, sadly, will be appearing in Avengers Doomsday. So we will have each of our lovely panelists introduce themselves, and we will start with Jeremy.
Well, thanks, Rob. My name is Jeremy Bement. I'm a longtime Doctor Who fan, along with pretty much any other sci-fi genre you can think of or property. I host a podcast called Doctor Who Panel to Panel, which focuses on the very niche market of Doctor Who comic books and comic strips. I've been doing that for roughly 15 years now. It actually is on hiatus. Speaking of hiatuses, it went into hiatus earlier in 2025, kind of mid-year, just due to the fact there's not a lot going on in Doctor Who comics at the moment. But I am glad to be here talking about how to make it through all this.
And Gabriela.
Hey, hi, I'm Gabriela Santiago. I'm also a writer. My most recent short story that came out is in the anthology Not Your Poppy's Utopia, Latinx Visions of Radical Hope. And I have another one coming out in volume 9 of the Horror Library. So vastly different tones there. But huge, huge nerd and Doctor Who fan for almost a couple decades now. So excited to talk about all the different obsessive ways we can continue to enjoy it, no matter what the hiatus situation.
And we also have Chris Hawton here. Hello, sir.
Hello. Greetings from across the pond. Yeah, I am co-host of the All New Adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast, which has been running for almost 9 years now, which I find kind of like amazing and brilliant and terrifying and shocking. That we've managed to kind of like But I think part of the reason we've managed to keep that going for so long is because all the books that came out during the big hiatus, aka the wilderness years. So yeah, I will be. I've been publishing a few different Doctor Who anthologies, and I took the opportunity to not applaud Michael Grade when I had the chance.
So I want to take this back a little bit before the first actual hiatus, and Jeremy, you can chime in on this as well, because I think you had a similar experience. For me, I first discovered Doctor Who, and then I joined my local fan club, the St. Louis CIA. And for us, the hiatus was, back in the day, we would get the current episodes shown on bootlegged VHS tapes, and we'd have to like have this sort of like long stretch of time before we got to see new Doctor Who coming over from England. So that sort of trained us, right? And then we had sort of like, okay, I've got the most recent Doctor Who magazine, and then most recent Doctor Who fanzine that I like, and the most recent Target book. Now I have to wait. But then I was in St. Louis and you were in Iowa, and we both had PBS stations that bought a lot of the packages early. So for us, we were finishing up Tom Baker and some of the his run and some of the other doctors, and we were waiting for the Hartnell Troughton package, and we had to wait. We knew it was coming. They announced it, and then we had to wait for that. So for us, a lot of the hiatus was knowing the package from the new doctor was coming, or a new doctor was coming. And that was sort of like an experience that sort of laid the foundation for us as American fans, I think, to jump into this. And I'm just wondering if that was similar for you with Iowa and the unit people.
Well, you actually are kind of you're ahead of me as far as getting into Doctor Who, because when I got into Doctor Who, it was right when that hiatus was coming to an end. I became a fan of like 85, 86. So it was kind of right when that hiatus was going, when they had the 18 months off. And I got into watching Doctor Who through Iowa Public Television right at the tail end of them showing the kind of the first season of Colin Baker. Attack of the Cybermen was my first episode that I actually saw on TV. And it was right after that that Iowa Public Television got the whole package, starting with William Hartnell and going through. So my fandom getting into it in Iowa was almost perfect timing to start from the beginning and start watching Doctor Who straight through, every week having a new story to watch. But I do remember that hiatus coming to an end, finding out about the Doctor Who Fan Club of America and finding out that Colin Baker was coming back, but he was going to be leaving. And, getting my Whovian Times with Sylvester McCoy on the cover, showing that there was going to be a new Doctor and that, the seasons were going to continue on. So I didn't have to survive that gap like you did, but there were plenty of people in Iowa that were, because Iowa had been showing Doctor Who since the early 70s. So there was lots of people who had seen all those Tom Baker and John Pertwee stories over and over again, and we're waiting for something new.
Yeah. And Gabriela, did you have an experience similar to that?
Yeah, so for me, I was really lucky with when I got into Doctor Who in terms of content, because New Who had been going for a few years, so there was all of that really easily accessible. Once I wanted more, Netflix was still mailing you shows in the mail at that time, but it was still pretty quick to get Sarah Jane Adventures and Classic Who, and more stuff was on the internet. So I never had a hiatus with Doctor Who. My more experience of that is with Star Trek. Most of the time growing up, we didn't have TV in our house. So even though I fell in love with Next Generation as a middle schooler, I really had to like sneak a lot of my information about it from the internet, from like episode recaps and fan fiction. And by the time I had like access to TV and DVDs, Star Trek was basically off the air on television. And it was going to be a few years before the Star Trek movies came back. And people didn't believe that the Star Trek movies were actually coming. They were like, this is fake. This is a rumor. They've been talking about the Academy era Star Trek forever. It's not going to happen. So that really seemed like an indefinite, possibly permanent hiatus.
And Chris, I'm guessing for you, it's a different experience because you were growing up, you have Doctor Who, and then by the nature of British television, after the season ends, you just sort of wait around for it to come up again. So I guess waiting out for new Doctor Who, while still annoying, was probably not as difficult as us over here in the States.
Well, you may say that. I grew up in the Middle East. And so most of my Doctor Who, certainly all of my early Doctor Who, was from American Forces Broadcasting. So I grew up on kind of like Tom Baker reruns. And then we had a kind of like a brief stint in Australia, where we were exposed to the ABC that would kind of do their own kind of, they'd be showing Sylvester McCoy. And we moved back to the UK in the summer of 1989. And I was really, really excited to be watching kind of like live, like Doctor Who for the first time that no one else has ever seen in the world. And kind of, but I also had this sense from reading Doctor Who magazine at the ripe old age of 10 that possibly it might be going away at some point. And I did know about the hiatus, the first one, because I remember my mum explaining to me that my dad would be quite sad if we lived in the UK because Doctor Who had stopped. I then just had to kind of exist on Doctor Who magazine, which I kept on reading until about like year 1998, 1999. And kind of Target books, and then the New Adventures. I remember Peter Darville Evans, the editor of the New Adventures, saying that all of their readers must have gone through sort of like puberty and be above the age of consent. And I was thinking, no, No, I am 13, but I am loving what you're doing. So please keep going. Yeah. Yeah, so that was my experience. I did have some friends who had subscriptions to things like B Sky B, and so every now and again I would be given sort of illicit recordings because a lot of Doctor Who had not been released on video. I would be given sort of I would see for the first time stories I had read, like Earthshock and stuff like that, and I would have the kind of weird delight of watching my school friends watching the Peter Davison era and not knowing what happened at the end of Earthshock, and then sort of saying, "Why didn't you tell us?" I'm like, "Well, I wanted you to experience that for yourself." Yeah. Yeah, sorry, a very long answer, but
No,
yes,
it's a great answer.
not,
It's a
not
great
the
story
answer you were
too.
expecting.
No, it's a great story. I just wish I would have known ahead of time, so I would have phrased it differently. But still,
No
we
worries.
got there, and I think it's actually a better story than if you just had the regular "I grew up in England" story. So,
Yes.
um, the first hiatus that a lot of people talk about was when Colin Baker was kind of get dragged out and screwed around. And we had this really long gap with Doctor Who being created during the Colin Baker era, which gave us the lovely gem of Doctor in Distress that we all love. And for me, and you guys can kind of talk to this too, that was sort of a very key time in fandom for me, because that is when, and this is something Gabriela mentioned before, we were talking earlier, that was a really great time for me to have engagement, right? Because before, I would talk about Doctor Who at the bookstore where I'd go get the books, or other people I knew that were into it, right? But during the hiatus, with the Colin Baker hiatus, I started looking at, what other avenues do I have out there to explore Doctor Who? So I started reading fanzines and sort of reference material on the show. Like, I started really diving into the history of the show at that point. But it was a time where I really realized that I'm not alone with my fandom. There are other people that like it. That was the experience for me. I'm just wondering if any of you had a similar experience.
Well, for me, I didn't necessarily have that kind of experience at that point in time, because, like I said, I was just getting into Doctor
Yeah.
Who, and I was more familiar with it being on Iowa Public Television and watching it every Friday night and working my way through all these stories I had never seen before. A friend of mine had introduced me to Doctor Who through the Target novelizations, so I had read probably a dozen of those before he said, "Oh, by the way, there's a TV show that this is all based on." Um, but at that point in time, I was just kind of immersing myself into, me and my friend were the only two people I knew that actually watched Doctor Who on a regular basis growing up. And I was a high school kid in a small town northeastern Iowa. It wasn't until going into the right at the end of the classic series back in '89, where I had gone off to college and moved to a bigger city. Found out that there was a magazine all about Doctor Who that I could get on a monthly basis, and discovered that there was a few other people out there besides me who were fans of the TV show.
Nice. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I mean, I found out a lot about Doctor Who from the Doctor Who quiz books.
Oh, yeah.
Because yeah, there was no Wikipedia or anything like that, and so I was learning by rote, sort of which stories sort of various doctors kind of regenerated, and which companions kind of like came and went, and so it's building some of these up to be these enormous stories. But I did also note that this was kind of in the Middle East and Australia. I did also note that none of those quiz books were published after 1985. So, which kind of gave a bit of a hint that certainly in the UK there might have been a perception of Doctor Who going somewhat off the boil.
Yeah, funny story about trying to reconstruct the canon of Doctor Who from secondary sources. I was reading a lot of fanfics where the Brigadier is just referred to as the Brigadier. So for quite a decent amount of time, I thought he was a Time Lord, and that was his title.
Well, naturally, yeah. Yeah.
That's the
But
naming convention.
yeah, and I had no idea how to pronounce Adric.
Mm.
I had a teacher at school who was, I think, one of the first few other Doctor Who fans that was not a relative of mine who I'd met, and I kept on saying Adric, and he went, "No, no, no, it's Adric, and he's awful, but it's Adric." So,
Look, if
And then
somebody stole my
go ahead.
badge for mathematical excellence, I would be just as mad.
I would never get a badge for mathematical excellence. Um, moving on, I think the next big hiatus that we had was after Sylvester McCoy, and that was the long one, right? And in many ways, this created a fertile ground for content that we get and enjoy now, right? We had the Virgin New Adventures, we had a bunch of other books, we had fan videos and fan episodes, and convention culture really began to take off, and people were determined not to let Doctor Who die, which was great. This is when I get to meet a lot more fans. This is when I'm starting to sort of see things that go outside of TV. Where like, I want to know more about what the Sixth Doctor did. Oh, here's a book, or here's a fanzine, So we still had materials. We had reference materials, of course. We had the magazines and the books and things, but you get sort of the advent of this like fan culture that like is really awesome. For at least for me, this is like, again, we have the engagement, but we also have people putting their creative talents to work. A lot of really great authors contributed to those Doctor Who books that came out in the wilderness years, and of course, this lays the groundwork for the audios as well, which is still one of the things that we're doing now as we go through a hiatus. Is we have our good friends, the audios, to keep us busy. So just kind of talk about that long hiatus a little bit, and sort of what you think that sort of teaches us about the hiatus we have now.
I wonder whether, for me, the long hiatus helped cement my Doctor Who fandom, because I
Yeah.
never had anything on TV that I felt that I'd grown too old for. Because the books kind of like got older. In fact, the books probably got older than me. But I was kind of like trying to kind of like keep up with them. And so yeah, that's a very me-centric answer to that question.
No, it's a great one. Yeah.
But I do wonder, if I'd been born 10 years earlier, might I have kind of like wandered off? Yeah, maybe. May I have come back? Yeah, maybe. But I think it certainly did kind of yeah, help the fact that there was this thing that because I'd known it probably had not there'd been some periods where the quality had been shall we say variable at best, and my taste. And then season 26 was just such a great season. I think for me there was this extra kind of like poignancy, the fact that it had got brilliant again and then it went. And I think that just chimed with me. And so I was there holding the flame for it. I mean, I was kind of like one of the few kind of like fans at my school, apart from one of my teachers randomly, who he would also try to get me onto Star Trek so that I would have something current. I was going, no, 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 that's not Doctor Who. And but I think for me, 1996 was when Doctor Who seemed to die. I don't mean that in any slight against Paul McGann, but it was just because of the fact that the TV movie didn't start a TV series. I kind of thought, oh, oh, that's it. And I went off to university, and I had got some of the BBC books, but I thought, oh, it's not coming back. And the Big Finish CDs are quite expensive, and you have to get them by mail order, or you have to kind of go into Forbidden Planet, one of the comic, yeah, in fact, pretty much the only comic shop of note near where I was living at the time. And yeah, and I just felt kind of priced out. However, I did find once Virgin had lost the license, Forbidden Planet did have a whole host of kind of Benny New Adventures and various other books from the New Adventures on kind of on discount. And so that introduced me to a whole host of books that I probably wouldn't have taken a chance on. And yeah, and I was much happier spending kind of like, £1.50 on buying a Benny book than sort of like, £5 or £6 on a BBC book. Also because I was kind of like felt that the BBC had stolen my Doctor Who. Because I had loved what Virgin were doing. So yeah. And then I just remember being utterly shocked in 2003, when kind of like the announcement was made. And also being kind of relieved that Scream of the Schalke was not the future, because I remember waiting ages for it to download on my landlord's computer, and I was furtively watching it because I didn't want to tell either, for some reason I didn't want to tell either him or his wife that I was a Doctor Who fan, because I kind of like felt embarrassed about it. And so I was just sitting there in his study. I mean, he must have thought I was looking at porn. Instead, I was just watching Scream of the Schalke. I'm just going, what is this? This is not what I'm wanting. But anyway, right, I'll stop talking.
No, that's terrific. And I think too that the thing about the hiatus that we went through at that time is it did sort of lay the groundwork, as we said, for all this other cool stuff that happened. But really, the internet changed everything, because it took our local fandom and made it a global fandom, and it made surviving any type of delay in Doctor Who coming on TV like so much easier, because you could connect with people across the globe. You could suddenly watch clips of missing episodes. The telesnaps were suddenly available. The internet really sort of unified, I think, the fandoms in Australia, America, and England and Europe really, really well. I think that's sort of the moment that it kind of really did become global, because I think PBS was great for it, but every PBS place was kind of different. And there wasn't really a way for everybody to talk to each other unless we went to a convention. But then the internet comes along. So as I go into a hiatus now with Doctor Who, thank God there's the friggin' internet. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say, as someone who came in later and then like looked back on the hiatus as part of like the Doctor Who experience I was catching up on. I love that the internet was there, because I don't know how else I would have ever like watched Downtime or Probe or any of the other real-time productions. Those two are my favorites. I just love that Liz Shaw got her own spin-off. She got to be gay in it. That's great. Downtime, the cinematography is fantastic. And just, I think what that hiatus really teaches me is that like the love of Doctor Who is so strong, is that if people stop making Doctor Who, that doesn't stop there being Doctor Who. The other people step up and make different versions of Doctor Who. Like, this is the time for fans to get creative, to get wild, to dig into projects.
I also think too that it broke down a lot of cultural barriers in fandom too, because I think people of different genders, different preferences, and different lifestyles, it sort of demystified Doctor Who. Was like, I think you kind of touched upon this earlier, Chris. It's like, oh, I didn't want them to know I was a Doctor Who fan. You know, growing up in the Midwestern United States, you didn't really want to advertise early on that you were a fan of Doctor Who, because that puts you lower on the Trekkie scale, with kids at school chasing you around, and it was, not a badge of honor that you wanted to have. And I think that having the internet and having the hiatus and having these other alternatives really helped a lot of people connect. And I think it really helped a lot of people feel more positive about themselves through their fandom.
Yeah, for me, the wilderness years are where I grew. My love of Doctor Who grew. My interest in fandom or discovery of fandom grew, and it was all because of mid-90s internet being available, and find out that there's other people around the world that are Doctor Who fans. But even before that, when the wilderness years first started in the early 90s, having Doctor Who magazine still there and coming out on a monthly basis, one, it gave me new Doctor Who to read in way of comic strips, which, me being a lifelong comic book fan, that was brand new stories of Doctor Who that were, in my opinion, just as good as the TV show. It continued right on from there. You still had the Seventh Doctor, you still had Ace going on their adventures. The Virgin novels, I didn't get into those right away, but luckily I went to a Visions convention in Chicago back in 1993 for the 30th anniversary of Doctor Who, and that's where I met a guy who came all the way from Sydney, Australia for this convention, who worked at a bookstore. So we struck up a deal where I would record the latest X-Files, Star Trek uh, episodes for him and send him videotapes. And in return, he'd send me Virgin New Adventures. So that got me into reading the novels and discovering how good they were. Um, I was still living in my little small town in northeastern Iowa at that point in time, but still watching Doctor Who on Iowa Public Television. That caused me to contact Iowa Public Television before one of their pledge drives and say, hey, I would like to help out. I would like to come down and meet other people. I know these people taking the pledges are Doctor Who fans too, or science fiction fans. I would like to meet them. And Iowa Public Television saying, sure, come on down. You can help take pledges, answer phones. That in turn caused me to meet people that were like-minded in me about their interest in Doctor Who, science fiction, all that sort of stuff, and caused me to move to Des Moines. It changed my life. My life would not be what it is now if that would not have happened. And even continuing on from there, Doctor Who fandom, the fact that there were so many people that were Doctor Who fans that wouldn't let Doctor Who die during the 90s. You know, pre-96 TV movie, all those people that created the books, that wrote the books, that kept Doctor Who magazine going, that bought Doctor Who magazine, wouldn't let it be forgotten. It was still there, and it caused even Philip Seagull creating the TV movie. Somebody else who wouldn't let Doctor Who die, and I remember being on America Online when they would have the chat room for Doctor Who, and him asking all of us Doctor Who fans, what kind of TARDIS do you want to see? Do you want to see the shiny new Peter Davison TARDIS, or do you want to see a beat up old battered TARDIS in the movie that we're going to be doing? That kind of sparked interest again for Doctor Who. It didn't go past the TV movie, but it still kept it in people's minds, thinking it's still around. And then in the late 90s, Big Finish starting their audio range, being official Doctor Who stories, kept it going. In Iowa, we started the Universal Network of Iowan Time Lords. A bunch of Doctor Who fans who watched Doctor Who on Iowa Public Television every Friday night started chatting as we would watch the episodes and becoming friends. And then Bill Albert said, hey, we should create a club for us. And we started having twice a year get-togethers where we could actually get together and meet people face to face, watch all these missing episodes that we had heard about but had never seen. And it just kept going from there until the new show came back. For me, the Wilderness Years proved that just because a TV show comes to an end and it's not being made anymore, you don't have to let it necessarily go and just move on to something else. If you have a definite love for that, you can keep it going, whether it's reading books, reading the comics, listening to audios, creating your own stories, that kind of thing. If there's enough people out there that have that love for that property or for Doctor Who, that they can keep it going.
I mean, I think Doctor Who magazine has a kind of an underappreciated role in keeping the show alive, because here was this monthly magazine. I mean, even changed publishers, and because it was originally Marvel, then moved to Panini, and there it was each month producing kind of new Doctor Who sort of stories, as you say, Jeremy. Also, as well, interviews and kind of like speculation, kind of like articles, and people talking about being a fan. I mean, I remember vividly some fantastic sort of columns that I think we now know were written by Vanessa Bishop. I might be wrong, and that just opened my mind to kind of various things of kind of like of Doctor Who fans all kind of hanging out, and it just sounded great. I also remember Matthew Jones's very personal columns about sort of about his experience of Doctor Who fandom and kind of watching it with his boyfriend, and it was and like for me as well, it was interesting because I'd not read too many things from kind of like a specifically kind of queer experience, and so that was also interesting. And so yeah, it all just helped. I mean, yeah, there's a reason why Doctor Who magazine is still sometimes referred to as kind of like the house magazine. I think sometimes people refer to it as Pravda, which is the I think like a Soviet Union publication, because like in some ways it was like the official line, but also it was allowed to be kind of like the unofficial and to kind of like take risks. Yeah, and like Jeremy, I mean, like you, I very much enjoy the comics and sort of particularly the Eighth Doctor comics. I
Yeah.
just thought were amazing because they were like, oh, okay, we've got this Doctor. Doesn't look like he's coming back on telly. So let's do some fantastic risk-taking stories. And yeah, so I very much point people to Endgame, which,
Mhm.
despite its title, is the opening arc. I'm not going to spoil it, but I just remember that there's one particular cliffhanger that I was just in shock, and I told my friends at university, none of whom were particularly interested in Doctor Who, but they were kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. But I do wonder to what extent people will be allowed to take those creative risks in this new hiatus if it goes on, or kind of maybe people will continue just taking those risks in fan fiction.
Mhm.
But yeah.
No, and actually, Chris, I wanted to just quickly
Mm.
bounce off what you had said. Two things. One, with Doctor Who magazine, they used to have like a place where you could ask for pen pals in
Mm.
there, and I actually put or had sent them in a letter saying I wanted pen pals for Doctor Who, friends.
Mm.
And I had people sending me fanzines that they had created about the Sixth Doctor, about the Seventh Doctor. People just sending me a letter saying, here's a flyer from the Ultimate Adventure stage play that I went and saw the other night. So there were things like that, which I think is neat. And the other thing I wanted to mention is you're talking about the Eighth Doctor comic strip.
Mm.
One of the things I don't think people appreciate is the fact that the TV movie, when it came out, no, we didn't get a new TV series from that. But the fact that it was able to give us a new Doctor, that we had 90 minutes of screen time to get an idea of what this character was going to be like, this Doctor was going to be like, and to have brand new comic strips with this Doctor, brand new books with this Doctor. I think the TV movie, if that hadn't come along and we would have just continued having the Seventh Doctor going on adventures, I wonder how long that would have continued before they would have just said we're all out of ideas. We've been doing Seventh Doctor stories for 12 years now. Nobody's interested in this character anymore. Could that have been the end of Doctor Who in fandom? I think Kevin McGann as the Eighth Doctor gave us a fresh start for new adventures for people to jump on to. And I know for me, like the books were something that was totally brand new even after the new adventures. The Eighth Doctor books, the majority of them were vast, great stories. They were fun to read, really thought provoking, just good adventure books. And I think that kind of kept that a new fandom going for those people that might have seen the TV movie.
Yeah, I mean, my co-host came in with the TV movie. Though what you're saying about what would have happened if the TV movie hadn't occurred, I mean, Virgin, I think, were planning on regenerating the Doctor, or at least doing but I think they were planning on doing it in a way that could be walked back if need be.
Oh, okay.
And there was yeah, there were some kind of like subtle announcements in Doctor Who magazine saying that in a certain book, a member of the crew would be kind of like severely wounded, and I thought, oh, hello, and I think it was Jim Mortimer's book, Eye of Heaven, that was originally going to do that, and then that became a BBC book. But I think like the BBC went no, 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 but which might well have been because Philip Seagull was kind of wandering around, and the BBC kind of thought, no, let's kind of like keep this kind of like nicely tied in. But yeah, but
And
yeah, got
I was just gonna say, I think to your point you made earlier about like, will we be allowed to take those kind of creative risks this time around? I think that's an excellent point because like now there is a perception that wasn't there back in the wilderness years that Doctor Who is a potentially lucrative property. And so you can't just be letting people go out here and make dubious canon breaking claims or things. So I think any kind of future novelizations, audio plays outside of Big Finish, fan film kind of things are going to probably be very tightly controlled. And they should still hire me for them. Please contact my agent, Jenny Goldboy at Donald Mass Literary Agency. But I think if people do want to do anything that is more creative or have Kate be prosecuted for child endangerment and child labor or anything that might potentially scupper any plans for future Doctor Who, it is probably going to be fan fiction. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love fan fiction. I love writing it. I love reading it. It's a different beast, and you got to do it just for the love of the game.
So we find ourselves now in kind of a lengthy hiatus. What would you advise people now to do if they still want more Doctor Who and they don't necessarily have Doctor Who? I mean, I know we have spin-offs and audios and all these fun, there are so many options for people, right? Sort of like, what would you tell someone if they came up to you and said, hey, there's not any current Doctor Who on right now. What should I do? How can I survive this? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say you have 60 years of television. And sure, there are a lot of great spin-offs that I can recommend to you, depending on like your favorite character, your favorite medium, your favorite type of story. But that's 60 years of television. And even if you've seen it all, like now is the time to really go deep on it. Now is the time to have the opportunities for creative thinking, for critical analysis, for socialization and community with your friends. Do some rewatches. Do themed rewatches around different monsters, different ethical issues, different characters. Do a challenge rewatch. Is it possible to watch every episode of Doctor Who in like a chronological order, not by when they were aired, but when the episode takes place? My friends and I used to do drunk Star Trek night, do drunk Doctor Who night, make some Doctor Who cocktails, Doctor Who dinner party. Think of the most challenging cosplay you could do and try to find it and do it. Look, do those rewatches. Really think about the themes of the episodes. I recently did a Silurians rewatch for another panel I'm on, and I'd always enjoyed the Silurian episodes before, but watching Doctor Who and the Silurians, Doctor Who and the Sea Devils, and Hungry Earth, Cold Blood all in a row really drives home not just the themes that the Silurians tend to bring up in the shows, but just the quality and the craft of the writing that you might not have noticed with the decades in between them. So I say now's the time to go deep.
I would echo that, though I would also encourage folks to go beyond the television. I mean, there's like over 25 years worth of Big Finish audio, and some of that is available on things like Spotify. So yeah, you can experience quite a bit of that legally for kind of like for free slash not very much. So I would I'd recommend that. And also as well, there are quite a few sort of like books that are available. I mean, we do have our own kind of like modernish equivalent of the missing stories in that so many of the Doctor Who novels are now really, really expensive.
Mhm.
And I know that the BBC audiobooks are going to be at some point soon doing kind of audiobooks of some of the sort of like the 90s and noughties wilderness years books. And so that's something I'm really looking forward to, of having opportunity to kind of like experience some of the the great novels that I've not had chance to read yet, and also that I don't have to remortgage my property to get a copy of.
Yeah, I would kind of go along with what you said, Chris. Over the years, I used to run a comic book shop, and I have a Doctor on TV all the time. And people would come in, they would ask me, I want to get into Doctor Who. How am I going? What should I do? Going into this hiatus, for those people who have been Doctor Who fans all this time, it's a great time to revisit your favorite Doctor. If people are new to Doctor Who, pick one of your favorite Doctors from the past and jump in, whether it be watching reruns on Pluto TV on the Fast Channel, or uh, or even trying to find some of the novels featuring that particular Doctor, or the comic strips. Find the graphic novels. Titan has been doing Doctor Who comics for um, almost 10 years now. There's plenty of collected editions. They just had done a humble bundle of PDF copies of all their Doctor Who comics. Those are easy to have access to. Like you said, there's a big catalog of Big Finish audios to listen to. There's a lot of different ways out there to access Doctor Who and enjoy it. One thing I would say is keep supporting the products that are coming out right now. Titan Comics is in the third issue of a four-part Shooty Gatwa miniseries that I encourage people to read. It's a really well-written story and amazing artwork. Keep buying Doctor Who magazine. That shows that there is still support for Doctor Who out there. And the Blu-ray sets of the classic series as they come out. Pre-order them, buy them, and show the BBC that yes, there's still fans out there that want Doctor Who, whether it's classic stuff or the new stuff.
I would
Yeah.
also add to that too, two things. One, support your local independent convention. There's things
Yeah.
like Galley and Chicago TARDIS, and they do one in Long Island as well, Long Island Who, that have really Doctor Who. They're at their heart Doctor Who conventions, and they get the spirit of the fandom much more than sort of these tent shows do, right? So support those. Also, we talked about the internet before, but now there are so many podcasts about Doctor Who. There's Doctor Who A to Z. There's Watchers in the Fifth Dimension. Chris has got a podcast. Jeremy's got a podcast. There's so many different podcasts about Doctor Who that's another great way to sort of whet that appetite as well.
And it's a great way to find out. Oh, sorry, Gabriel.
Oh, just saying, shout out to local Twin Cities podcast. Get off my world.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think podcasts are a fantastic way to kind of like to find out about Doctor Who and also to get like different perspectives. I mean, I must say I kind of miss Verity because Verity was always bringing kind of interesting views, some of which I agreed with, some of which I disagreed with, some of which had never occurred to me, and so I do. Yeah, I do always just love a really good Doctor Who podcast, and there are fortunately quite a lot of them, and it's interesting as well that so many of them are not British, or at least are not 100% British, and like that I find interesting that Doctor Who is a lot more global, because like there are some times where I feel a bit concerned about the future of Doctor Who, just because I also feel concerned about the future of the BBC, because at the moment a sort of an orange tanned person is threatening to sue the BBC into a black hole in space, and that I kind of think might pose its own problems for the BBC, as to even if it doesn't go ahead, it might still mean that they are less risk taking. but also this time round, they know that they have something that could be a money spinner, and has been a money spinner, and it is something that they own, which is not true of most of the TV shows that the BBC produces. That kind of gives me some hope. But one thing that does slightly worry me a little bit is, like, from what I understand, at stateside, and I think in a lot of countries that are not the UK, it is hard, I think, to find the modern series on streaming.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to pose a challenge, particularly if Disney Plus kind of ever decide to kind of like remove Doctor Who from its archives. Because I think, it does help if it is available somewhere. And we are incredibly lucky in the UK that we have got on iPlayer most of Classic Who, with some notable exceptions. And we've got all of Modern Who. And I just kind of think it will definitely help the future of the show if that can somehow be solved for the various different international markets.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right, over here in the States, as far as watching the non-Shooty Gatwa Doctor Who, the modern stuff, it's not available anywhere. It's I had this feeling. Radio Free Scarlet has talked about it off and on over the past couple of months, and it's almost like the BBC are kind of shopping it around to see what streaming service would be interested in picking it up. But I also think that they're probably trying to piggyback it with, well, we would like some financial backing for a new series as well. And it's hard to tell if any of the Netflix or Amazon Prime or anything are going to partner up on that. It makes it really tough to be a Doctor Who fan nowadays to watch anything from the Ninth Doctor up through Tennant or through the 14th Doctor outside of Disney Plus. And chances are by the end of 2026, it won't be on Disney Plus anymore. Once they get the War Between the Land and Sea aired and their contract is done, then I have a feeling Disney Plus will probably drop it, and then we won't have anything.
I will say one of the things you can do if you're looking to watch the new Who and you can't find it, even to a certain extent the old Who, check your local library. My library has been fortunate that since the show came back, they've been keeping all the current box sets from Eccleston all the way through to Jodie and now Shooty. But also, I was amazed my local library had some of the not necessarily the Big Finish audios, but some of the audio books, right? Like my library had the Dalek Master Plan as an audiobook, and that's how I discovered it. I'm like, oh my God, I have this big giant thing, right? I spent the pandemic listening to Dalek Master Plan and some of these other things. So check that as a resource as well. And maybe, this is a great time for, conventions and sort of getting out there as a Doctor Who fan and meeting other Doctor Who fans, and then having, some of these great ideas that Gabriela had, watch parties and things like that as well. We shouldn't let the fact that we don't have any current Doctor Who on right now stop us from sharing this thing that we love. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes going forward. I think one of the things too, that when people look at Doctor Who and bringing it back, they have to look at the audios, they have to look at the comics and how well those do, and realize that this is something people want. So I'm hoping that we get that. The other thing that's great about this hiatus, not that there necessarily is everything great about a hiatus, but one of the things that I really like about it too is that I have noticed the last maybe 10 to 15 years, the difference in fandom. Sort of like for me growing up, it was all like a lot of white nerdy guys. And now it's more diverse. There's more active female voices in podcasts and writing about Doctor Who. There's also more voices of people of color and different genders. That's really positive. So I'd like to think that this hiatus is an opportunity to sort of explore some of those avenues as well. How other podcasts treat it, one of the things you have is you have a bunch of podcasts that are hosted by women talking about Doctor Who, and it's fascinating because it's a whole aspect we never thought of. So jump in to a part of Doctor Who fandom that we have not explored. We're close to time here, but I'm gonna give you guys a chance just to sort of give your closing statement on this topic about what you think people can do to survive a hiatus, and then we'll sort of just catch up and say goodbye.
I mean, I think also find things that are like Doctor Who as well. So if you find yourself kind of going, I want to watch something else, then I remember Doctor Who magazine in about 1998 saying that there's this great American TV series that started that is kind of like Doctor Who, and it's called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, I wouldn't recommend that now for various well-documented reasons, but yeah, there will be kind of like other things coming, and also as well, I'll say if you look at sort of Star Trek and Star Wars, both of those franchises went through fallow periods. So like it's broadly fine. If we do, I mean, I much prefer Doctor Who to be on television. And whilst I hope that it will come to pass that there'll be a Christmas special this year. Um, yeah, at least we have had it. We can still carry on listening to it and reading it. And I know that I have kind of. I mean, I feel I've more than scratched the surface, but like I know there's a lot more material out there, and a lot of it is pretty good. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much material. I've been listening to Big Finish for years and years now, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of it. It's like, okay, I am familiar with the monthly range and Companion Chronicles and one or two other ones, and there's so much more. You could live your entire life and not listen to all of Big Finish. And I think that one's a low barrier to entry with the internet now that you can download them. And you do get to download them and keep them, which I prefer to streaming. I think as we've seen, it's very easy for people to remove stuff from streaming. So that's kind of the double-edged sword of this convenience. So there was a shout out of libraries earlier. If you're in Minnesota, we have an excellent, robust interlibrary loan system where even if your local library doesn't have it, you can get it loaned to you from all the way across the state. So that's a great way to do it. I also recently discovered that thrift books is a great way to stock up on seasons of old television that are just hanging out there for like $4.99. Sometimes it will surprise you what classic Who DVDs might be on there for wildly low prices. So I would just say, the pace of life now, and by extension, the pace of fandom is often very fast. But take this as an opportunity to slow down, to really enjoy things, to think about why you enjoy them, and create something. Don't worry about the quality of it. We all need to create stuff to express ourselves, to be mentally healthy, to form connections with others. So have fun.
Well said, Gabby. My take on it is, as somebody who survived the wilderness years, Doctor Who left the airwaves in 1989, and burying the TV movie didn't come back until 2005. That's 16 years of not having Doctor Who on television, but it was also some of the most fertile ground to build upon for Doctor Who in way of comics, books, audios, anything and everything. Doctor Who is a big enough property for the BBC now that they are not going to let it sit dormant for another 16 years. They are going to shop it around. They're going to bring it back. It's just a matter of time. Take advantage of this time that we have now to, like Gabby said, to slow down. Pick a doctor that you enjoyed over the past 20 years and revisit them. Rewatch the TV episodes. Read some of the books or the comic strips. Listen to the audios. Create your own stories. And just because the show isn't on the air doesn't mean that you have to just abandon it entirely. There's plenty of ways for you to enjoy the show, enjoy different versions of the show, enjoy the fandom of the show, and keep it alive until it comes back on the air.
All of those points are fantastic. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. And I do want to remind you the console room is happening this weekend. So please, if you see a Doctor Who fan in the hallways, say hi to them. If you meet one, make a friend. And also, you could check out all things console room on their various social media platforms as well. So go to the website for console room and you can see the different platforms and sort of explore that. Folks, where can they find you? If people want to know more about you and what you're doing, where can they find you?
You're not going to be finding me in console room apart from virtually, but you can listen to the all new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast, which you can find on there we go, on on various social media. Not so much that blue one, but Blue Sky and and Facebook, and just look on look on your podcatcher of choice and you'll find us.
I'll be in person at the convention as well as on the Discord. If you would like to check out my written work, my website is gabriela-santiago.com. Check out Reconstructing the Goldenrod Conspiracy, a Diner Room, Saturday, 2:30 to 3:30 for a short story with some hidden console room Easter eggs. And if you have a speculative fiction play that is happening in the Twin Cities, come tell me about it. My New Year's resolution is to attend as many of those as I possibly can and see if I can get one nominated for a Nebula.
And me personally, I do a podcast, kind of on hiatus, but it's called Doctor Who Panel to Panel. It's all about Doctor Who comics. You can find it wherever you find any other podcast that you listen to. I've done 180 episodes. If you want to listen all the way back to the beginning, easiest way is to go to archive.org and do a search for Doctor Who Panel to Panel. They're all there as MP3 files you can download and listen to. Lots of interviews with Doctor Who comic writers, artists, editors, from past to present. Everybody from people who did Doctor Who comics back in the 60s up to present day. So if you are a comic book fan, if you're a Doctor Who fan, I hope you'll check it out.
And thank you all for sharing your thoughts on the hiatus, how to survive it, what you did with previous hiatuses that are sort of affecting you now as we undergo this long waiting game. Thank you for your time. Thank you, folks, for watching. Please spread the word about folks and please explore the fantastic Console Room YouTube page because there's all kinds of stuff there to check out as well. And thank you all for contributing to this panel. It's great to have your input and your knowledge. And Chris, thank you for doing it across the ocean. I know it was a long swim for you to come and be here.
Yes.
And thank you so much for attending Console Room 2026.